Yeah, y'all, LVZ. So, of course we know that Jordan is always dick road and people make up shit that he did. And they belittle the greatness of players who come before him as if they didn't matter. You'll hear lies like there were only 8 teams when Bill Russell played, when it was 16 teams. And if it was 16 teams today, y'all, it wouldn't be no scrubs in the league. Imagine if you just get rid of certain teams and had to put all the best players on 16 teams. Now guys who are superstars become role players. Nobody wants to touch that. That's why you got guys in the Hall of Fame averaging 6 points. But that's okay. So then you hear how Michael Jordan is so great. Michael Jordan is the greatest, and how they like to shit on players of this era like LeBron, Durant, guys like that. They could never be like Jordan because of the hand check rule. Now, I've already debunked that the hand check rule was not as significant as people thought. And as a matter of fact, the numbers were, as far as individual scoring leaders, was higher when there was a no hand check rule. Now, when the zone came in, the numbers dropped. So I've debunked a million times that the hand check rule had anything to do with tough defense. But people like to lie about the hand check rule, which was installed in 1979. It was just, they just made more of an emphasis on calling it more. They didn't redo a new hand check rule. They just made emphasis on calling it. Just like traveling, you know, they're calling it more. They were calling it more. They were never calling that, so they started calling it. So the same thing with the hand check. They made more of a concerted effort to call it, and due in part mostly to people playing great defense against Michael Jordan. When you play great defense against a great player and he's the face of the league does something to stop you from playing that defense. But this is not about that. I've always said that I believe Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson never got the credit that they deserve because they weren't on the television era. And I contend in the case of Russell and the Big O, it's because they were strong advocates for black people having rights in America. And they spoke up against racism. So you're not going to have a 10-part documentary of a bunch of bullshit where, I mean, imagine with a 10-part documentary with the great Bill Russell. Bill Russell's in his 80s, 90s. Why doesn't he deserve a 10-part documentary chronicling all of the things he went through as a black man during the civil rights segregation era, trying to play basketball in chopped and screwed, segregated white-ass Boston. Now, I contend to you that Oscar Robertson, Bill Russell, and Wilt Chamberlain were greater than Michael Jordan, and Jordan dick riders are the reason I think this. Oh, you just doing this to piss me? No, they're the ones that told me that the hand check rule, follow me now, the hand check rule was such a big rule that if you were able to score against that, you had to be the greatest. Because that's why they say Michael Jordan is the greatest, right? Well, when Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, and Bill Russell played, there was literally no hand check rule. You mean to tell me Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 in the no hand check rule when you could not hand check at all? I mean, when you could hand check, when there was no rule saying you couldn't hand check. Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double for the season when you could hand check. Tiny Archibald averaged 34 points and 10 assists when you could hand check. with 2 hands. So, and Jordan did play in the hand check era. Shit, I showed y'all 1,000 videos of Jordan getting ticky-tack hand check calls for him, putting them on the line and putting great defenders in foul trouble. So, I need to know my JDR fans, my JDRs. If your gospel is Michael Jordan is great because they could hand check him, even though it was a hand check rule, and we seen people get hand check fouls called on them, checking Michael Jordan. So now my question to y'all is, was no hand checking rule when Oscar Robertson played, when Kareem played, when these guys played? There wasn't one, and they still averaged these great numbers. So by definition, doesn't that mean they're tougher? This is what you said. Doesn't, because you say that about LeBron. LeBron doesn't play in a hand check era or whatever. So doesn't that mean that they're tougher, better, and more physical than Michael Jordan? Get at me.